Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. And I hope you enjoy this new show, whether you're viewing it on the internet or listening to a podcast version of the episode. I do want to thank you for being part of my audience. You can also find links to videos or podcasts on miamighostchronicles.com, as well as where you can submit your story about any eerie experiences you've had, which I would love to hear about. Just go to the Submit Your Story tab. Please subscribe to our channel so that you receive notification of when we release a new show. And find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This is where I usually live stream and where I give you a behind the scenes look at locations where new episodes are being filmed at. I also tell you about all the interesting guests that will be appearing soon on Stories of the Supernatural. I hope you enjoy the show, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Anyway, guys, I tried to do a live stream, and I don't know. My bandwidth was hurting, and after two attempts, I said, enough. So here I am, pre-recording it, but I'm going to release it as soon as we're done. And I'm very excited because I have with me a good friend of mine, and we're going to call her Sam because even though she's retired law enforcement, she's still involved in some sensitive stuff. And as a matter of fact, a few months back, we did a Q&A about sadists and serial killers. But the reason why I wanted to have her come in and talk about her own personal experience is that I've known her for several years. And she, along the years, has had, if not encounters with ghosts or anything, just unusual things that sometimes she would talk to me about because, you know, sometimes you're just at certain places that unusual things happen to you. And no matter how much you want to rationalize it, you realize I can't rationalize this. There's no explanation. And I remember throughout the years, she's told me of different situations or experiences she's had that even now, she can't identify them as out and out paranormal. There's like a big question mark over like what exactly was this about. But anyway, hey Sam, how are you doing today? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I'm good. I'm doing good. How are you?
Great, fantastic. And I was I know that throughout the years you've had a lot of different experiences, doesn't have to be supernatural, just unusual stuff. And because one of the things, everybody thinks that is that sometimes a lot of people see police officers in a vehicle with another, but there's a lot of times where police officers are just by themselves, right?
Most of the time, yes. We are a small agency, pretty understaffed, so we're usually on our own in our vehicles, and only when necessary will two respond to anything at the same time.
Okay, so yeah, so which is that's the and that's I guess where I go with that is that sometimes when you're with another person, you go to the other person, did you see that or did you hear that? But when there's no other person to find out, did you hear that? Did you see that? Basically, you are like, okay, what was that?
Exactly.
And
You're alone to figure it out on your own.
right, right, exactly. And that's what it ends up happening. Um, and I'm saying, like, when you go through your checklist, okay, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. So I know you've told me a lot about your experiences throughout the years, but thinking back, what was one of the times or something that happened that occurred to you that either right then and there you knew something was up or that later on, because sometimes a lot of these things you realize them after the fact, that you think back and you go, wow, that something was going on there.
Well, the major one that went on for many years was an incident that I was involved in 2001, 2002, which was a murder suicide where
Okay.
the husband had. I happened to be there, and the husband had murdered his wife.
Wow.
I was not on a call; just happened to be in one of the neighbors' houses, just having conversation. And the gentleman had stepped out. You did not hear that they actually had a gunshot had taken place inside the house because he actually muffled it by putting it up to her. So all you heard was animals going crazy, dogs, birds, and
Oh,
everything. So I saw Joe knock at a neighbor's house. So I approached him, and at that point is when he actually pulled a gun on me. I was
oh,
able to jump behind a vehicle, and once he lost sight of me, he did take his own life. At that
wow.
point, I did go into the house and found that he had indeed killed his wife. Moving forward from that, it was, unfortunately, they both passed away. There
Right.
was no children. They were a little bit of an older couple, had been together for many, many years.
Okay.
But that house, they were renters.
Okay.
The home was owned by someone else. And as the years go by, the house continued to stay empty.
Really.
Um, my entire career, and as of today that I know, that house is still vacant. No one has ever rented. Same people still own it. And it's just never been occupied after that murder suicide. And I want to tell you about 5 years ago, working nights, curiosity. I was curious, and now they have an app for everything. So they had one of those apps that works as almost like those forgot what those they're called, the ones that tell you the one words or two words
Right. Yes,
um,
I know which one I know what you're
as
talking
a
about.
paranormal
Right, exactly. They
site. Oh,
almost
let me
they
download it.
almost are like an ovulus in the sense that yes, I know what you're talking about.
So I decided to download it. It was about 3 in the morning, and no, I pulled up in
It's
front of the
definitely
house,
the right time to do
and
that.
yeah, exactly by myself, 3 in the morning, and I said, well, let me park right in front of the house and hold my phone out the window and see what happens. Well, sure enough, I do that, and the phone all of a sudden says, "Get out." So,
Oh
well,
my
I got
God.
out.
He
I
was
went
like,
looking for
"Okay,
someone else
thanks."
to just be with somebody else. Yeah, I was surprised, and I've actually always had an eerie feeling every time we've had to go search that house. And the unusual thing from that house,
Right.
not only does the 911, but also the and receives calls from this house that is not occupied
Are you
to this
serious?
day. It continues to receive 911 calls with no one on the other side of the line. And every time officers responded, there's nobody living there, there's nobody in the home, but it continues to call not only the 911 system, but the actual station with the full 10-digit number.
Right. In other words, it's not being sent because of the 911. You know how it will direct it to the police department that it's supposed to. It's an actual, like if they were dialing straight into the station, is what you're saying.
Correct. Correct.
Wow.
So
And
that's
let
an
me ask you
interesting
because
one.
this couple was there prior to him doing that murder suicide, which you were very lucky because it was not the first time that somebody that gets into that frame of mind, he's ready to take other people with him. They he you there you had a little bit of history about them before, right? As far as that he was not such a nice guy.
Yes, I had heard that he had been a very nice man, other than when he had been drinking. When he was drinking, he was
Oh.
horrible neighbor to the people around. But because he was such a nice man when he was sober, no one ever called the police on him.
Oh, wow. Like everybody gave him a pass because they were thinking, okay, he does this
It's the
because of the
alcohol.
alcohol. Yeah.
Yes, and it came out that he was heavily armed. He owned a lot of firearms, and he had actually given his wife a timeline as to when he was going to kill her by, which
And
should have been a sign for her. And he had pulled guns on family members in the past, but no one ever called. No one ever had called
man,
or
all the signs were there.
took
I
anything.
mean,
Yes.
and let me ask you, why do you know why he decided to do that at that time?
Um, he was terminally ill. He had already been told that he was terminally ill, and he had had an argument on that day with his wife over a minor bill.
Okay. Yeah, in other words, it wasn't. I'm sure he wasn't such a nice guy to live with anyway, because how can you tell somebody I'm gonna kill you? And unfortunately, maybe, what do you think? Do you think she didn't believe him, or she was one of these that just was had been victimized by him maybe so long? Like, because it's got to be like mental abuse. You start telling somebody, "Hey, I'm gonna do this." I can imagine. I wonder how those family members felt when he actually did it. I,
Yeah, they had been together for over 30 years, and from what I've understood, that
yeah,
he was verbally abusive that entire time.
right.
So she probably just was so used to hearing it that she no longer took him serious.
Right. And that's the thing. And from what I understand, a lot of times in those scenarios, despite the fact that he's seemed to be an unhappy guy, plus really unhappy because he got sick, to him there was nothing worse than leaving behind his wife to be alive and he not be around. In other words, you're going with me. That's horrible.
Yes.
And let me ask you, do you think is it that the owners haven't attempted to rent it out at all, or do you know why nobody's ever moved in there again?
I've, I've, don't know. I mean, I know that the house had been put up for sale and it never sold. I don't
Okay.
know, maybe because of the disclosing of what occurred there, but also it's just never been rented. I've
Right. In other
never been in
words,
contact with the actual property owners to even inquire about it.
yeah, because I was gonna say if this happened what 2001, we're almost it's almost gonna be like 20 years, and I know that that area that
Yes,
house is at because I know what area you covered during that time. That's a very desirable area to live in for residents.
absolutely,
It's like that's
absolutely.
prime real estate where you're at, and the fact that he has not been able to sell it or rent it, one of the two, makes you wonder like what is going on with that. That's very unusual. Wow. So I could say, sometimes you think, okay, when these things happen, maybe for the first couple of years, the owners think, I'm going to sit on this because if I try to sell it, people will know about what happened and I'll lose money. Or same thing with a rental, like, okay, let me let it die down. But this is a lot of years have gone by.
Yes, I mean they maintain the property.
Yeah,
It doesn't look like an abandoned. It didn't look like an abandoned
right,
property. You know that lawnmen would keep the grass cut, and the exterior always stayed nice and clean. I don't know what the interior looked like,
right,
but the on the outside it looked like a house that was being occupied and was being used, but it wasn't. The last I knew, the neighbors used to put some of their vehicles in front of that house, so it did not look vacant.
right, exactly. And I know because of the area that you live that they wouldn't let them, like, let him let the basically the property look trashy. And that thing that you said about getting 911 calls, is it how is it at nights in the daytime? Is it or is it just randomly?
Um, it's in the evening hours, not midnight hours, not day hours, like afternoon hours. I would say like dinner time hours. And if
Wow.
recalling back now that you're talking about this, that's when the incident occurred.
I was about to ask that. That's exactly what I was
Yes,
about to ask. Does this coincide around the time
yes.
that this happened? Wow.
hmm Even
Be-
though a 911 call never went out that night.
right. Exactly. But at the same time, if you think about it, it's almost like 911 is the universal sign for help. Like, as far as when you need help. And I know what you're saying because who was it that called the police? A neighbor or what?
No, no one. I happened to be there.
Oh
I'm
my
the one that
God, you're
said it on
kidding.
the radio. I was there just a house away when this all took place. So
Oh my
I was actually the one that, after everything happened, where he ended up taking his own life, I went and let him know what was going on and what I had. And once I went inside, let him know that I had a second person, and it never went out as a call because you didn't hear the gunshot
Oh no?
because it was muffled up against her actual her body, and she had a lot of girth, so it did not you did not hear anything outside because I was standing outside. So if I couldn't hear it standing outside, none of the neighbors heard it.
Oh my God. So let me ask you something. Did he? And okay, so from what you're saying is he goes ahead, shoots her. Sounds like on like really close range inside the house.
Yes.
Nobody hears it, and he
No.
goes outside because he saw you, or why?
No, he had no clue.
Okay.
I think I actually went to tell a neighbor what he did. And on the way back to his house is when I confronted him because I did not know what occurred because since you don't hear anything.
Right.
And at that
Right.
point is when he raised the gun as I realized there was more here than just, him going to a neighbor because of something. I originally thought something had happened to an animal because of all the animal noises I heard. So I thought maybe it was something happened with one of their pets and that he went to the neighbor for help, and that's
So let
why
me.
I was going over
Okay.
there.
When you say the animals, what do you mean? The animals in the neighborhood, or?
A lot of no, they had a lot of animals within the house, dogs and birds. So that's what you heard was a lot of dog barking and a lot of birds squawking.
Oh wow. So much so that you must have been like, what in the world is going on?
Yeah, what came to my mind, one of them must have passed. Something happened with one of the animals. Animals got into a fight. Something where it made them all go into an uproar.
What? Oh my God. Okay. So it makes you wonder, when he went outside, did he see you? Or like he said, was he going to go tell a neighbor? God, I mean, sometimes you think about this and you really don't know what's going through this person's mind. And it almost sounds like, given the chance, he might have killed somebody else, whether it was you or a neighbor or who knows. Talk about
Right.
being at the wrong.
The neighbor never opened the door, especially telling her, thank goodness he told her through the door, and she did never open the door to him.
Oh, he went to the neighbor's house. He actually got there.
Yes, and knocked and spoke to her because I had no clue what we had. I just was walking over there. I told the person I was speaking to, let me go find out what's going on over here.
And what
And
did he tell the neighbor?
he told the neighbor, I killed my wife and I want you to know.
Oh my God.
And on the return back to the house is when I asked him, what's going on? Do you need my help? And that's when he raised the gun.
And it makes you think like, wow. I mean, this person obviously was disturbed long before he actually
Oh,
did this, but it
absolutely.
makes you think like, okay, he killed her and he didn't shoot himself. He actually went to the neighbor's house, and again, it makes you wonder, was his intention, even though he told her, I wanted to tell you, maybe this is the kind of person that was thinking, okay, when this person opens up the door, I'm going to
Yeah.
shoot them. Would
Well,
it be the first?
and I think I surprised him because what happened. He went to the neighbors and was on his way home. So I'm
Yeah.
sure he never thought that fast was going to be
Yeah,
police
it's like, man,
officers
they got
there.
here quick. Yeah, exactly. Like how.
It was he was confronted with a situation that probably was unexpected, and
You
um,
know what? And in my experience, this type of personality, the last thing they want is not to be allowed to kill themselves, so that they go through having to be arrested, having to go through a trial, you know what I'm saying, and be faced with
yes.
what they did. Because,
Even though I've understood he didn't have long to live,
but
no
still,
more than 6 months is what I have understood.
really, okay, but still, at the end of the day, he wanted to prove that the ultimate control. And you know what? I heard about another story. This was in another state, and I want to say it was Kansas. Very similar. A couple, um, two kids. They were not his children. They had apparently, and what's really funny is this guy was a counselor. Hello, but from what all appearances, it was a good marriage. but it was getting something weird was going on where I think she wanted out. But anyway, to make a long story short, he had gotten some type of communication where he was, I want to say it was either lung cancer or some type of terminal disease, where when it was diagnosed, it was far advanced when he actually realized. And he did exactly that. He killed his wife and both children that were not his, and then himself.
Oh,
Well, no, I take that back. He didn't get to kill himself, but by the time that it went to court through trial, he had died. So, in other words, he knew that
right.
he wasn't really going to go to jail for any length of time. In other words, he knew he was going to die, and which is very selfish because it was, and this was a relatively younger guy. When I say younger, I mean somebody, they were, I think, in their early 40s or something like that. And almost like the thought of it, she's going to divorce me, I'm going to be alone. Plus, I don't want, in other words, if I'm, to put it bluntly, I'm screwed because I have to die. Well, guess what? I'm taking, I'm not going to let that happen. It's incredible. And what's really funny is when you spoke to the neighbors and to the family, he seemed like a really nice guy, very quiet. He had a some type of job, I want to say a counselor in some type of mental health capacity. I don't know with what. And goes to show you that even though this guy sounds like he had already been telling everybody that would listen what he was going to do.
Okay.
But that thing about the 911 calls, that's incredible.
Yeah, and it's not only the 911; it's the actual local police station. Because
And
I
what
actually
happens
talked
when
to
they
the person
calls?
that
It's
received
just
that
what
call.
it no, what is it, static, or they hang up, or what happens when the call completes, or what?
It's just an open line. That because I've asked, and they say no. They know what they already know the number
Oh God.
because it displays, and they already know that there's not going to be anybody on the other side of that line.
Can you
But
imagine? That
that it's
was
and this is a line that you have to actually, like I told you, dial the full
dial it.
10-digit number. This is not a 911 or it could be automatic. It's
And
just
then you
not.
ask
It's
yourself,
actually a physical.
what are the chances? I mean, this is not somebody that could say, I'm going to do a crank call to fake out. It's like this is the originating number. In other words, this phone number is not going to show up on the display unless that's where the call's originating from.
Exactly. And they were used to it already. It was, oh, it's this number again. So they still picked it up. They still, said this is law enforcement.
And
And
how about the neighbors, Sam? What happened after all these years? Is the same neighbors, or did anything ever happen afterwards where the neighbors called you guys?
no, never received calls from the neighbors about any of that. I from the last I saw, it was always the same vehicle. So I'm going to tell you, it's always been the same neighbors.
Okay, okay. So in other words, who's there now, or all the years afterwards, was the people that were originally when this happened. Wow.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
And even the person he spoke to, the last I know that
it's still there.
um, she was still there.
Let me tell you, smart person. Don't open the door when somebody comes over, especially your disturbed neighbor, just to tell you that he just
Very
killed his
lucky.
wife. Wow. They're lucky he didn't kill the animals because sometimes they even do that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, so what else is it's like
Um,
what? I know you've told
well,
me that in your station there's weird stuff that's going
I was
on,
about to
right?
tell you, yes. Several people, I have had an eerie feeling, but never seen anything, but multiple officers and administrators, chiefs and stuff, have seen someone either seen a person with a top hat or have seen a dark shadow walk from one office into another. And when they look down the hall, there is no one there.
Wow.
And has been multiply reported of this dark shadow, or some have actually seen a tall man dressed in black with a top hat
Hat
walking
man.
in the
I
hall.
swear to you know what, Sam, this is so unusual because, there's this paranormal phenomena called Hat Man. Some people it's Shadow Being's Hat
Oh,
Man. And then you have some versions where he's got I've heard where he's hooded, other times where it's a cowboy hat, and on occasion I've heard exactly what you said, that it's a top hat. That I remember making a joke one say going, he's off going off to the opera. And it's like he's seen in the places where you could say there is no connection whatsoever. That you
Yep.
could say, well, this used to be a theater, okay, and maybe this was somebody that was, had a prop and it was a top hat. As to why you would see that at a police station, it just doesn't make sense at all.
Exactly. And that area has only been populated since the early 40s.
Right. That's what I was about
It
to ask you. That's around the time that that's not even 100 years. It's in the 40s. It's not like way back when, and you know.
no, no.
And
It's
and
from
let's
the early
face it.
40s.
This is something that it's hard to overlook. Somebody with a top hat on.
Yes. Well, they were frightened by it because they like, and the thing is that they actually discussed it amongst themselves. Like, okay, you saw that, right? So that they
That's
were confirming it's not one person saw it. The people that were there in the conversation all saw the exact same thing.
exactly, and that's what I mean. That it's like, and after a while, I mean, especially, I'm gonna throw men under the bus. I know sometimes men have, sometimes they're the ones that get weirded out the most, but sometimes they have a really hard time admitting that they saw something like that. So
Yes.
when they start,
And besides that, there was also in the same station early October, and I don't know if it was associated to an employee that had passed,
okay,
that was a very good friend of mine.
okay,
Um, During those first 2 weeks in October, there's also a lot of activity at night in that station to the point that the person is there as a dispatcher by themselves all night in that station, have actually stepped outside, left the doors pried open, and sat outside in case they had to answer the phone, and did not want to stay in the station because they kept hearing. They have an old holding cell back from the 1940s. They would actually hear the door being slammed shut,
and that's
which is a big
unmistakable. You
metal
can't.
gate.
That's
No,
not
you
something
can't.
else,
You
and you mistake it
cannot.
for that.
No.
Uh-uh. Wow.
And they would be afraid that, like, oh, there's something here. And they would, I'll be outside. They would tell us on the radio, I will be outside. And it's
Right.
always those first weeks in October.
And so it's like an anniversary thing, kind
Yes.
of.
And they already know it. They already expect it because they were so used to having experienced that. And it was during that time, which I don't know if it is associated. I don't know why it would be associated, because this is not a person that ever frequented that area, that went into that area, that worked those kind of hours anyway. This is a gentleman that would, would fill in on the weekends during the day, had always wanted to be an officer, but could not because he was a big man.
Mm-hmm.
And when he passed, he was made an honorary officer after his passing.
Right.
So that, I would think that would be his only love. I guess I could.
And let me
what I
ask
could
something.
use
What, he
for
passed in
that.
early October? Is that the significance of the
Yes.
date?
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. And if you think about that, yeah, that's that anniversary thing is very telling and very coincidental. And like you said, how can you mistake? I mean, let's face it, the slamming of a cell door, and especially like that old kind, like you said, from the 1940s, like a holding cell, because that's what you guys got. That's where you put people until you take them elsewhere. I can
Correct.
imagine that. No wonder. And is it at nighttime, like overnight, or throughout the daytime, or is it just because at night everybody's gone and that one person that's left behind, the dispatcher, has to listen to this thing going on? Wow.
No, it was at night because I'm sure if it would occur during the day, everyone would still hear it because that metal door was really loud, really loud.
Yes.
Like you knew that door was being shut when it was being shut.
What? That is incredible. And I don't blame that person. Is like, I gotta do this job, but okay, in case I have to make a run for it, I'm already outside the door. Oh my God.
Yeah, you would pull up and that person would be sitting outside with the radios in their hand, just sitting outside on a little ledge, saying, "I ain't going back in there."
Yeah. And that's when they're not faking it. That's because it's like, hey, I got no choice, but That's yeah, that's a very good sign that they're really, really scared and they just don't understand. It's like I don't understand it. I don't want to know what's in there. I'm not gonna about to go there and find out. So let me ask you, because I know have you just out of curiosity, has anything ever happened to anybody being held in the cell by any chance? Like throughout the years that you know of?
No,
No. See?
no,
So you can't even pin it on
not
any,
that. I mean, maybe I think maybe one time I heard, but it was way before my time there. Um, Someone hung themselves with a belt. That's why you have to take everything off of them, shoelaces, belts, and everything.
Right.
Because being that it was an old holding cell, it even had the cage above. It wasn't
Oh,
just it was like a full cage, almost like a giant bird cage. I guess how you could
right,
explain it.
right, right. Yes, I know
So it
what you mean.
had, so we had that rule because I have understood that prior to me being there, someone
Somebody
had
had
hung
hung
themselves there.
themselves. Right, because they had those bars across the top.
Correct.
That's possible, but still, that thing about the anniversary date, that's too coincidental. That's
And
too
this was a
unusual.
person that had passion for the job, had
Right.
wanted to be law enforcement his entire life,
Right.
but was unable to. So
Talk
his
about
closest to it was being a dispatcher.
right. It was like the unfulfilled desire, overriding desire that they had. That this
Mhm.
was the closest that they got to it. Yeah, and I believe it. I believe it. It's not like somebody that I would like to, but somebody that's really got their heart set on it, and things. It's just not in the cards for them, and then they die. There you go. Wow.
But the agency did choose to make him an officer.
I
So
know.
when he
At least they
passed it
did that.
in, call him a dispatcher, they called him an officer.
That's nice. That's nice that they did that. That they recognize that this person's dying wish, for lack of a better word, was that to that type of recognition. But still, at the same time, it's like they stopped by just to say, "Hey, don't forget about me."
It's always during those weeks.
And have you ever had calls, Sam, from people either calling about disturbances or things going on at houses that when you check it out, there's nothing there, or you find something unusual going on?
Well, there was a call that we received for many years. It was an old lady. She would always call, and it was to the point where, like, oh, here we go again. Here we
Okay.
go again. It was all the time, here we go again.
Okay.
She would always call of a man in a hospital gown standing by her clotheslines.
Oh, wow.
She used to call all the time. Same call, same place, same person. And the officers would respond. They would check the yard, and there was never anybody there. So and then it was always that, oh, here we go again. Here she's calling again about the man in the backyard. She must not be well. It's what the census was, that she's not well, she's not well, she's not well.
Right.
Years go by, and get the call again, and it wasn't me that responded. It was two other officers responded. And when they get there, they're thinking, oh, okay, of course, there's nobody in the backyard. Let's go let her know there's nobody. It was a young lady that opened the door. They told this young lady, let your grandmother know that he is not there. He goes, what do you mean, my grandmother? Yeah, the lady that lives. He goes, no, she passed away. I bought this house, and I'm the only one that lives here, and there was a man in my backyard. So, of course, they tell her, because this
Oh
is the
my
new owner, so
God. So
now they
basically, they
realize
got another person. Oh,
a new person living in the home who saw the exact same
holy
thing,
crap.
same place, same man in a gown by the clothesline.
Oh
So,
my
of course,
God.
now these officers are like, oh,
Yeah, it's not the crazy old lady.
this lady wasn't crazy. So, of course, they proceeded to explain to her, listen, we've been getting this call for years, and we thought something was wrong with the lady, but you're the new owner, and you're seeing the exact same
That's what
thing
I was going
as
to say. The
she did.
description, besides it's a man in your backyard, its a description was the same thing, right?
Exactly, the man in the hospital robe. So they proceeded to explain that to her, and from what I've understood, she actually had a blessing of the house, and that call did not go for what, 4 or 5 years after that. I don't think I ever got that call.
So in other words, she realized, okay, makes you wonder even how many other times she might have thought she saw something. But let's face it, and it must have been solid enough that they actually thought that it was a real person in their backyard.
Yes.
Makes you wonder what the
Yes.
history of that house was, if it was a prior owner.
What some people thought after, especially after the fact, was it was the older lady, the original owner's husband had passed in the hospital.
Okay.
So that's what they were thinking. Well, maybe it's her husband who passed that's in the backyard.
Yeah.
Because I want to tell you, it was an older man that they would say. It wasn't like a young man. It wasn't, they could
Right.
tell it was an older man.
Right. And that's
So yes,
like,
the officers were very surprised. They were like in shock.
can you
They were
imagine
like,
that
"Oh my
poor
goodness!"
old lady all these years? She's
Yeah,
everybody's thinking, oh, that crazy lady, here she goes again.
yeah.
Wow.
She just wants attention. She
She
needs
just
somebody
wants
to talk
attention.
to.
Can she change what the reason that we're going out there for? It's the guy in the backyard again. And did
Yep.
she, how often was she calling? Sam, was it like every month or every week, or how often was she calling in and seeing that, saying that she saw this guy?
No, it was just a couple of times of the year. I would
Okay.
say three, four, maybe in a year.
But enough times that you guys were like, here we go again.
Yeah, and we never really. I don't think we ever even discussed it. This fine. Was there a pattern? Was it a certain month? Was it a certain time or nothing? I mean, always it was at night. That it was. It was definitely at night, but
Right.
not on a specific month or anything like that.
Wow. And that, see, that is, and like what you said, I'm sure that that new owner, talk about, see, that's the kind of story that when you hear it adds validity, because here there's no connection between these two people, and all of a sudden this new person is seeing what this other person used to see. Yeah, it's like, what are the chances of that?
Yeah.
That's
And no, and she said she was going to do a blessing, and after that,
it
we never
stopped.
received that call
It
anymore.
stopped. It stopped. Now let's face
Yeah.
it. There's got to be nothing scarier than to see not somebody not only in your front yard but in the backyard of your house. All right. And because the first thing you're thinking is somebody's trying to break into my house, because otherwise, what would they be in the backyard? So,
Yes. Or a peeping tom staring
or a
from
peeping
the
tom, yeah,
by where the
especially at
clothesline is. I
night.
think that's how we used to receive it.
Even
The
though
man
that
in the yard.
description is really weird in a hospital gown, the first thing you're thinking is, man, this is somebody that got out from some maybe a psych ward or something. Who knows? I mean,
Exactly. That's probably what it's because you see the gown.
yeah, yes, of course. That is such a great see that, and that's what I'm saying. That when it's happening, nobody really chalks it up to being either paranormal or unnatural. It's after the fact that everybody thinks back and says, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wasn't this the
Yeah.
same house that we used to get that call for?" Wow. And I know you've mentioned to me that, and I'm gonna throw the men under the bus again, that even though men have a hard time admitting sometimes that they see or witness something, when they do, it wigs them out totally. Have you ever had any of the other officers come and tell you something? Because I know that you're looked at as somebody that has a good head on her shoulders, but that you're willing to listen.
There's one guy that always says that at our station, the same gentleman with the top hat, they would see him upstairs because there's a staircase, and at the top of the staircase is, you actually enter through below the staircase is where you enter into the back of the station. That
Okay.
he would always see the man standing up there. That he would always glance up because he would see the man in the dark, wearing the dark suit with the top hat, standing down, looking down.
Wow.
It was always the same one gentleman that would see this person. No
See,
one else had ever seen that had seen him up there. But
other people have seen him
always, when I'm going in,
downstairs in the hallways. He's the only one that sees him upstairs, is what you're saying.
correct. And I used to always just glance up as I'm walking in, you get a sense that somebody's looking at you, and I would glance up, but there wouldn't be anything there. It's just that sense that somebody's watching. And I would glance up and then go in, but I never saw anybody up there.
Oh crap! telling.
I don't know, was because he said it, or was it that I actually sent something? Because once you're told, you're like, oh, is there the person there?
Exactly. Exactly. And one of the things that I know that in that area, that the department covers, there's, from what I understand, a lot of people stay there for a long time. And then, yeah, you get people that come in, but overall, the residents there have been there for a long time. So after a while, you get to know who's who as far
Yes.
as who lives in the neighborhood or in that area.
Yes, when I first started working there, I actually met the very first resident of that city who had the certificate that said they were the first original resident of the area.
Wow. That speaks volumes because nowadays everybody's very transient. But that's one of the things I know, that area is a very, even though it's from the 40s, it's a very nice area to live in. It's very sought after as far as for a place to live at. Um, as far as buying the residence, and I know that everybody, even the homes they remodel, they're beautiful. They're beautiful. And let me ask you, have you ever had calls about unusual things on the streets or anything like that? Because that's what, and I guess my point is the following. It's the kind of area that neighbors know who's who or what's normal. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
if they see there's somebody strange or something going on, they're going to realize, wow, that's not normal, and they call the police. Not like, okay, I'm not going to call the police. It's
Nothing. I mean, you do get a lot of volume because this is an area where if there's anybody in the street, they're going to call the police. It's not that like, oh, it's okay. There's a person walking down the street, they
right.
call. But most of those original owners have already since passed or moved away.
Or moved away. Yeah, yeah. But still, it's. I mean, because I know exactly, the area that we're talking about, that people over there care about what's going on, and that's why I'm saying sometimes I know that, especially like that call that you had about the guy with the hospital guy in the backyard, that you get, you immediately get a call about. And as a matter of fact, I was even going to ask you, was she the only one that kept saying, and she, from what you're telling me, she was the only one that kept calling about the guy in the backyard, which of course later on it turned out that she was right.
Yes, yes. Her and then the
And then
new owner
the
after
new
her.
owner. And I know that, let me ask, because I want to say that many, many, many years ago, wasn't there also something about an officer that passed away?
Yes, we had a officer that had a motorcycle accident back in 1960 something
Okay.
that had passed, and they actually named a road after him.
Okay.
And in this department, he was the only officer that had lost his life in the line of duty.
Wow.
And to this day, he is still the only officer that was lost from
Which
that
is
agency.
fantastic nowadays, um, because of what's happening. It's incredible. And I don't know if you did you hear about that, they shot one of the commanders in Chicago, in the Chicago PD today. The guy with 30 years on. They
Yes,
killed.
I did hear about that.
That's horrible. That's horrible. That's why I'm
Yeah,
saying that.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I brought that up because the fact that which I hope you keep that record, that you guys have only lost one officer, speaks volumes right there. Because of, unfortunately,
I mean,
that's
officers have been involved in shootings, but have been fortunate they have not been injured.
right, right. Well, the thing is that even though you don't want it to happen, you know that chances are, like exactly like what happened to you. Either because you go out on a call, or like what you said, that day that you just happen to go by and there's this guy that's just killed his wife and comes out with a gun,
Yeah.
and very easily could have killed you or any other officer if they weren't aware or
Yeah, the person
realized
I
something's
spoke
going
to ran
on.
in the house because the person that I had been speaking to, I guess, realized it before I did what he had in his hand, and they were gone.
Right. And that's why I'm saying that nowadays, the things can happen. That's what I'm saying. That just having lost one officer all these years, that's great. That's a fantastic record because, like I said, whether it's something like this out and out shooting of an officer or part of, you know, like almost like what a lot of what's happening with like people that respond or officers that respond to domestic violence calls, that it's like, oh my God, you never know what you're going to find when you get out there. Uh, some murder suicide things and things of this nature. And and then like that officer is there, talk about they get they cross paths with somebody who either is going to kill themselves or what they call that suicide by police. They're hoping that the police is going to just kill them. So, and if not,
Yeah.
sometimes they take it out on the officer. So yeah, it's scary. A lot of people don't realize even in nice neighborhoods or areas, you could still run across stuff like that. It doesn't always have to be. And I'm sure you've run across that yourself because there's no perimeter fence on the area of your department. You can have anybody come in from trying to escape from anywhere and runs in there, and then all of a sudden he or she becomes your headache. So you never know. You never
Yeah.
know what the day will bring. But I know that I'm trying to think because I remember one of the stories that you told me, and I can't remember. God, I can't remember now. And it'll come to me probably after I finish up with you. But anyway, you know
I
what?
was actually curious of going back to that house and seeing
Yes.
what's there, and even if it's standing outside, because she passed away inside the house. He
Yeah.
passed away in front of the driveway.
Is the yard fenced?
No,
Okay.
no. The backyard, but not the front yard. But
Right,
he actually passed in the, actually not the driveway, in the walkway, but on the property.
on the property. And that's why I had asked you because it makes you wonder. And sometimes it's not even that if it's an intelligent, but stuff like that sometimes leaves an impression. If you had ever had any of the neighbors say, "Oh, you know what? I saw somebody standing out in the drive," that kind of thing. But obviously, I hate to say it, but especially because of the 911 calls, it almost makes you think that if anybody's there, it's not him, it's her.
Right. She was the one in the home.
Right? She was the one in the home, and let's face it, she was victimized. She's the one that got murdered. This is
Yes.
like you said. He knew that he was gonna die. Like within a few months, at the worst, at the most. But it was
And
like,
the vivid image I have is of her face, not his. His I saw, really, I remember more the pictures I saw, when the whole case, even though it was pretty much a open and closed case, but, they still have to investigate.
right,
Um, I have more vivid image of her when I went in there trying to assist her
right.
than I do of him.
And it was apparent when you saw her that she was deceased, right? That she had
Oh,
passed away.
yes, yes. It was, he must have shot her directly in the artery of the neck.
Okay,
You could see the black where that's why you knew that it made contact with the skin, because it had the black soot mark around it.
that's incredible. I mean, and that's, I mean, and I guess my point is that despite the fact that like you said, that maybe he had threatened her or made statements, but when you're, maybe she knew it or she didn't, or she kind of knew it but then never thought about it. It's, the fact that he actually did it, I guess, is one of those things that, maybe you spend so many years with this person saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, even if he was verbally abusive, but that they actually do it. And she knew that he was sick, right? That he was had some type of terminal illness.
I don't know if she already knew that, if she
Ah,
was made aware. I don't think she was even aware of when the gunshot came, because I don't think it was the ongoing argument. I think they had that argument, and he came back because she was in a way where it didn't look like she was in a confrontation
Right, right. Like,
sitting down. So it looks like she probably had her back when it happened, which I guess for her is better than not be aware than that frightening of what's going to happen to you.
yeah, I guess he was trying to do the last kindness. Wow. Mighty nice of him,
But
huh?
he was that heavy of a drinker that what he had was cirrhosis of the liver.
God, that speaks volumes right there. That speaks volumes. That's a lot of drinking.
Hmm.
To the point that it's terminal. In other words, that they were telling him.
Yes,
And
and
they
giving
lived
him
there
that
by
short
themselves with
amount of
the
time.
animals and stuff.
Yes, the only thing I knew that unfortunately her mother was still alive and was very elderly.
Wow. That's a very difficult thing. But you know what? It makes you think at some point if this mom, despite as much as she had to have worried about her daughter, even though she was an adult, probably at some point knew that something like this could happen. Be-
Oh, yes. I'm sure her daughter told her, and she probably just never listened to her mother's pleas.
yeah. Things like this, and and like you said, he was a nice guy, and it makes you. And I'm gonna say this. I know that you said that he had that Jekyll and Hyde thing going on, and when he
I was
wasn't
about to use
drinking,
those same words.
he was a nice guy, and that's why he didn't get the cops called on him. But you know what? I bet you that there's a part of that I wonder if there's neighbors that said, I'm not going to call the cops on this guy because this man's liable to come over here and do something to me. And it's not going to be worth the trouble.
True. Yeah, because I don't know if says I didn't participate in that investigation of the murder suicide. If their neighbors were aware of how heavily he was
He
armed
was
in the
armed.
house, because I know they had to go in there and they had to remove a lot of firearms from within that home.
And this is the thing. This guy lived in this beautiful, nice neighborhood area. It's not like, hey, I live in this really crime ridden area, so I need a lot of heavy firepower in case I need to like protect my family.
Exactly.
It's like, can you imagine maybe his neighbors that knew him a little bit better talked to him? They were aware this guy has a drinking problem. He's not wound too tight. Plus, he has a lot of firearms. Okay. And they're thinking, if I ever call the cops on this guy, I got to stay here and live next to him. The next thing I know, this man might come over here and blow my head off. Which is another good reason why maybe people were like, hey, mind your own business, forget it. You know, I would
Yes.
love to help this lady out, but forget it. They've been married for 30 years and I don't want to get involved. It happens that way sometimes. So,
Yes.
that is okay, Sam. I'm gonna let you go because I know you got to be someplace, and we talked about this before. But I want to thank you so much. We got to do this again. You know that I've talked about different things that we got to do a show on. And if you can't be here, then we could do this over the phone. It's great. I've got a lot of good ideas, and we've talked about it. But I'm not gonna let the cat out of the bag and say what it's about.
Okay.
So
Thank you for having me, and it will be my pleasure. Hopefully, we
okay.
maybe can even go back into that house and look into that a
Yes,
little
I want to
further.
do that. I want to. Wouldn't it be great if I could live stream, especially so I don't have like my little dog uh, having a little meltdown here next to me. But anyway, okay, let me let you go so you can do your thing. Okay, take care. Thanks so much. Okay,
No, thank you, Marlene.
bye bye.
Have a good one. Bye bye.
Okay, wow. And let me tell you something. I think that my little dog is having a moment here. Um, and that was just like a little. I know there's other stories that she's told me. I just couldn't remember them, and I know she had to go somewhere. But anyway, can you imagine that 911 thing? I can imagine that people when that call comes in is like, oh shit. Um, and also that thing about the cell and that anniversary, and you have um, and sometimes even though I asked her, usually sometimes in the middle of the day when people are coming and going and You got the public maybe coming into the station. Maybe things are going on, people just don't catch on, but there's nothing like being the only person in the building and you're hearing something like a jail cell door bang, especially one of those old ones. Think about it. By the way, that station, because I know what dimensions we're talking about. It's not a huge station. It's like smaller. So in other words, it can't be like, oh, something at the other end of the building, and it was. No, 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 no. What you hear is what it is, and that thing with a top hat, a hat man. And as a matter of fact, in another show, I talked about it where back in the 80s, I had a coworker, and she's one day we're on the subject of ghosts and stuff like this, and she was a teenager. She was living with her parents in an apartment of all places, a two-bedroom apartment, and she says that one day she sees a guy exactly like what he she described, a guy dark with a top hat, and she says she got a really bad feeling. Bottom line, I think like within a year, a few months, her mom had passed away. Her mom had a heart condition. Her mom passed away, and well, anyway. And I remember telling her, I go, God, that is so unusual because if you say, well, I see a shadow or I see this, you go, oh, okay. But this is, in other words, the sightings of the Hat Man, especially the one with the top hat. That's the one that gets to me. They're seen in the most, what's the word I'm thinking of? Not inappropriate, but the most likely place that you would think, okay, why am I seeing maybe a ghost or whatever with a top hat? Again, if you're talking the theater, if you were maybe living or situated in a really old part of town where maybe once upon a time guys ran around with top hats on, maybe it dated back to that, maybe. But again, you heard this place has been since the 40s. I know the apartment building that my friend may be dated from the 70s, 80s. Again, and again, nobody's going to be running around with a top hat. And that's that's really, and that they see him going, when you have these hallways where you have entrances to different offices. So they see him, and then you see this one guy that sees him on the second floor of the building. And that tells you right there that, is it something tied to the building, something that happened there before? Could it possibly be tied to the guy that hung himself in that cell? I mean, and even then, sometimes things happen that never get documented. I mean, way before her time. Who knows? You know, a lot of things. It could account for a lot of things. And, a lot of people, they talk about the sightings of the Hat Man. Not all the time, but equivalent, almost. I don't want to say the exact same thing, but almost as on the same level as like Mothman. Like, in other words, he's seen around either areas where bad things have happened, or will happen, or like almost like they're like the messenger, something that gives you like a warning kind of thing. In other words, it's not a good thing to see Hatman. That's what I guess what I'm saying. And so it makes you think, if you've got one that's there all the time, I wonder what that means. And I'm going to definitely follow up on going to that house that has been unoccupied for almost 20 years, which I'm telling you right now, that house is prime real estate. Okay, whether it's for rent or for sale, the thought that that place has never been sold, that's really, really unusual. Uh, I got to follow up on that. You guys are going to catch me out there, whether it's live or after the fact. You guys are going to catch me out there. Watch, because there's something there that's just like I said. You'll get some owners that let things cool off for maybe a 1 or 2 years if their pockets can afford it, and then they try to dispose of the property, either rent it out again. But when you've been going, it's going to be almost 20 years, maybe 17. That's a long time. Hmm. So anyway, guys, I hope you liked the show. I apologize. I tried to live stream this, did not work. I don't know what's going on with my bandwidth. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of my audience. You're all wonderful. Make sure to catch me on Facebook, Twitter. I live stream there a lot. If Don't forget my true believers to submit your stories, your experiences at miamighostchronicles.com. Go to submit your story tab, and you know, whether you're seeing the show on the internet or you're catching me on podcast, subscribe to uh, my channel so that you get notifications of when I release a new video or a new podcast. Either way, I'm all over the place. If you don't catch me on YouTube, I'm on iTunes, I'm on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher. I'm at every place. Just look for Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural, and you will find a podcast version of the show. All right. So, guys, thank you so much. You're wonderful. Until the next time, thank you so much for spending some time with me.